Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. So today we're doing something a little bit differently. We still have the podcast episode coming on later today, so I'm really looking forward to that. But at the moment, we're going to be doing a live sales training, so something very different to the norm. Because sometimes when I've done live trainings, it's been say like with Facebook group growth and things like that. Whereas in this case, we're actually going to get someone on the show just so that way they can participate and I can offer some insight into essentially my industry. Because I mean, yes, I build websites, but my entire background is actually sales. So, aside from some self-taught coding there. So I'll get Amanda coming on now. Being just a bit different just in regards to sales in the true sense of the word, because we've had some fantastic questions in regards to, well, how do I market this or, build that so then I can advertise here. And yes, with marketing and sales, it's a very fine line between the two. But when, in this regard, when we're talking about, hey, Amanda, now I'll just see if sorry, can you say something for me? I just want to make sure I can hear you okay. Oh, there we go. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, cool. So I was just saying basically with today's training, it's more of a sales training in the true sense of the word, because we've had some fantastic questions about how do I market this or that, whereas my real strength is actual sales. So that's why I wanted to essentially do that, which is transferable in any industry. So I thought if we do a sales training, then yeah, certainly from that, hopefully you can benefit, somewhat. All right. Now I'm just not sure if it's my phone or yours, but yeah, just the sound. So I've been having some issues lately. So, well, Amanda, why don't we start off with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Um, I don't know. What would you like to know?
How'd you get into web design?
Okay, so a little over 16 years ago, I took a web design class in the early high school. It was supposed to be a 16-week course, right? And I was like, oh, that would be so fun because I was already building websites with like Angel Fire and GeoCities and all that kind of stuff, right? So I
Okay.
get into this web.
Yeah.
You can work ahead. So I finished the entire course in 2 weeks with an A,
Wow.
and I was
Fantastic. Congrats.
yeah. And then it was always just like my favorite hobby. And then about a year into college, I started going to college to be a video game developer. So I was like, oh, making video games, that's like the coolest thing ever, right?
Yeah.
And right? And
Yeah,
so the
that would
school that
actually
I
be the best job ever.
yeah, the school that I went to, it was more coding and not there wasn't enough like game design and planning and writing and like I
Okay.
wanted to be in coding. So
Yep.
it was like all I'm like, I don't want to do all code. So I was looking at other schools, and my dad was looking at through the programs at the school I was at, and he's like, "Well, why don't you do this one? It's less credits." And I was like, "Yeah, but that's because it's an associate's degree." And I was like, "In web graphic design," and then it kind of
Yeah.
clicked, and I was like, "Web design for their job," and then it was so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, well, that's awesome. Like, if it's something you're passionate about, then yeah, if you're doing it for 16 years, that's phenomenal. The average industry turnover is, I think it's like 3 years of to 5 years, so you've done phenomenally. So I'm hoping with today, yeah, I can certainly offer some value and insight. And periodically the sound may be cutting out, but I think that's my end. I dropped my phone the other day, and although you can't see it because it's not the camera, but there's this huge line across my phone. I was like, yeah, maybe might do is now. Can you still hear me? Okay, if I do it that way.
Yes, I'm gonna turn up my volume a
Yes.
little bit.
Yeah, cool. All right. What I might do then, I'll sit forward a bit more. Because, yeah, I think it may be my headphones where they're just kind of in and out. I mean, ideally, the headphones in would be perfect, but, just got to roll the punches. So I guess, yeah, with this, so, because, I mean, with, say, sales in regards to extroverts and introverts, there's almost this, like, negative connotation with the phrase introvert, but there doesn't have to be because it's just a personality trait. That's all it is. That is all it is. And there's so many strengths to that as well, because in every personality trait, there's a strength and a weakness. So there's really no negativity to it. So it's more just a case of trying to play on your strengths for sales and as such. Because I mean, I know as an introvert, it can get very just exhausting just to be socially just out there. Yeah. And so, it's really a case of, I guess, just managing that in regards to, be on when you absolutely need to with a client, but then, take your breather afterwards and just, just relax in that regard. But
I mean, because in sales, like when I think of sales, I think of it in the true sense of the word, where you're basically, sitting in front of someone, or you're on a call or whatever it may be. And that's really where my main strengths are. So I'm hoping that I can help transfer some of those skills to you, so you can then leverage those better in regards to your own profession, and everyone listening at home as well. But so, I mean, we had a little bit of a chat prior in regards to, what kind of areas to focus on. And you mentioned one of those were really, you found that with some clients, you found that they were almost wasting your time in regards to that. They didn't know budgets, and you didn't want to jump straight to the, what is your budget? But at the same time, you didn't want to waste half hour to 45 minutes on a call with them without them being qualified to then know pricing. And then when you do give them pricing, then they're, I can't afford it, or whatever else. So would you like us to start off with that, Amanda?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, because like I know that I need to pre-qualify clients before I get to that point, but that's like I don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. Absolutely. What I'm going to do, if hopefully this works, because I really need to get this fixed. It's literally only happened yesterday, and the were well shut. So can you hear me okay? Yeah, all right. Actually, I can't hear you. We'll bail on that idea. All right. So, I mean, with pre-qualifying clients, so, and this is certainly transferable to the online world, but what I would used to do, because my background is sales, like everything I've ever done. Web design has been more of a hobby for me, which obviously now, leaving the 9 to 5, I've kind of just been using that because I'm passionate about design itself. But in sales itself, sitting in front of someone, trying to pre-qualify them, you can certainly transfer that to the online space. It's just you're doing it a little differently. So when I was, say, a one-on-one sit down with people in regards to the product or service that we were selling at the time, what we would have is a pre-qualifying questionnaire as such, that the potential client, or the person that had come in, they would fill that in prior to actually seeing me. And then I would be able to look at that and get a long list of things that they would basically be able to, tell me by just writing it down. So, hey, Sally, thanks for tuning in. Drew, cheers, man. So the questionnaire was something that was very important, because it gave me a lot of information about this person, and then about what their goals were in regards to coming in, meeting me that day. And that in itself is a really powerful tool. And I mean, sure, we didn't have on there, what's your budget, but I do know in the industry that there was one particular clinic, and they had their own basically questionnaire. It said, how much do you earn? And then there's these brackets. And after a very short period of time, they realized that they need to remove that ASAP. Because, without having that rapport with someone, just blatantly ask them how much they earn a year is just not cool. So, with pre-qualifying someone, it's, the questionnaire is something that certainly can be transferable to the online space, because I've had a look at a few different websites. For instance, I'm building one for someone at the moment, and she wants to be an influencer. And basically, I've looked at other influencers in the space, and one of which is basically what she's done is change her website. So at the very beginning, there's a pre-qualifying questionnaire there. So in essence, it'll say, what are your goals? And it'll say, do you want to earn an extra 500 to 1,000 a month? Or do you want to earn, 5K plus? And then, so that in itself is a pre-qualifier, because then they've ticked the boxes. And then when you receive the email and you basically get it, and you know exactly what their or where their head's at, where their space is at. And sometimes when, organically, if you do come across someone in web design, just ignore that. That's my doorbell. Someone's at the door, but we've got workmen next door, so they're just inconvenient as it is. So I'll just leave it. But yeah, so really, with pre-qualifying someone, if they've come across organically, it's very hard to just, without any rapport there, to say, oh, hey, just fill this in before we speak anymore. It's kind of like, well, that's not rude, but it doesn't really help the situation, because, if someone's got rapport there and they're talking to someone, they're going to be much more open to then filling in information about themselves. So, in that regard, if they have come through organically, then really it's just a case of then, if you can get them to fill in a questionnaire, fantastic, whether that's on your website or on your funnel or whatever else. But if it's a case of you're just speaking to those through text, or, you're on a phone call, then there are little key indicators that you can bring up to really gauge where they're at. And that's really where the sales aspect comes in as such. And getting to that, it's not something that we can just, in essence, straight away ask them, oh, well, what's your budget? Because really, we do have to warm them up, because as much as it's annoying to have, say, a half-hour phone call with someone, and then you realize that they don't have enough cash, and we've all been there, and sometimes that's just how it is. But then there's sometimes where someone will be, say someone was sitting in front of me and they'll tick on the box, oh, I'm unemployed, but they've already sat down in front of me now, so I still have to go through as much information as I can, but I'll try to wrap it up as quickly as possible.
Well, some unemployed or investors.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So with that, I mean, yeah, it's really just throughout the conversation earlier on, because when we get on a sales call, rapport is the biggest thing that we need to have in regards to getting them across the line. And whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it doesn't matter. Like, anyone can tell a story. And sure, it's because, I mean, with being an introvert, like there is less emotional momentum during the sales process. Because, for instance, being an extrovert, really kind of not in your face, but kind of just like, go, go, go kind of thing. Whereas some of the best salespeople I know are introverts, and it's just that with the way they speak and their mannerisms, it's a lot slower, it's more relaxed. They kind of just gently just ease into the conversation, and that's a strength to them, and that works great. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because we have a certain personality trait that we're then going to be missing out on, getting potential deals, because at the end of the day, it's about what service you can provide them, and it's just about getting them to see that service and all the benefits of the service for them to want to move forward. So, storytelling in the very beginning is fantastic to build that rapport, and, getting them to answer questions for you, open-ended questions, is a really big one. And, Amanda, I know we spoke, prior to this shortly, and it was, you've done a bit of sales training just to try and, hone your craft, which is fantastic. And so some of this may just be repeated information, but, if it helps, or if it helps it to sink back in, then, fantastic. Now, can you hear me okay on your end?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. Because yeah, since the phone got dropped, I'm very skeptical in regards to what I can hear and what I can't hear, so, and vice versa. So I was on Clash of Clans the other day, and there's just no sound. I was like, oh no. Yeah. So when you have someone on a call, especially being in the digital space, just asking them questions about themselves, bringing in not just blatantly, or are you married, but it's a good, conversational piece just to be talking about them. And then if they've got family, you kind of know where they're at financially. And then I find that bringing out questions like, once you've gotten to it as such, is not just, blatantly, are you stressed with anything? But if you can kind of work that into the conversation, it's a great tool to really gauge where they're at, because you might say, let's think of an example, like, if it's in the web design space, he's like, oh, well, what are your goals of having a website? And they're like, this, and this. I'm like, okay, well, is there any, in this particular space, are you stressed over anything about your business? And then they might say, yeah, I am a bit. I'm like, okay, well, is it more financial stress, or is it more stress about, getting it done on a due date? Or is it that, a bit of stress that there's too many things going on within the business? And then if they say financial, then okay, well, there's one of those key market indicators that finances is potentially an issue. So I now know that I need to pitch lower, or I need to qualify them even further, know if they're going to be eligible for my service. So, because with reoccurring revenue streams, discounting isn't, everyone's different and everything works for everyone differently. But, personally, I find that with, hey Tina, I find that with discounts, people get used to discounts, whereas people don't get used to free. So if you can offer them something just initially, whether it's if they've already got a website and it's about I guess analyzing their site, or whatever you want to do, offer them a report or something, that's good. Whereas if you offer them a discount and then it's a reoccurring revenue stream, they'll be like, well, why are you offering me? Why do I now have to pay full price? Whereas if I was a new customer, you're no longer looking after your ongoing customer. It's more you're now trying to look after all your new ones. So really, in that regard, it's a case of trying to figure out if you want a discount or not. If that works for you, fantastic. But really, it's just, if they mention financial stress, then we really need to dive into that a lot more to then figure out, okay, well, financial stress is a big thing. So that may mean that they're no longer going to come across the line. So, asking questions, in regards to their family is going to be really helpful to learning exactly where they're at. So, I mean, Amanda, what would you say is one of your biggest challenges in regards to, say, qualifying a person? Is it just not knowing what direction to take the conversation? Or is it not knowing when to kind of cut it off? Like if you know that they're no longer suitable for your service?
I mean, usually,
Because
I
there's no,
don't,
and it doesn't, oh,
it
sorry,
doesn't
yeah.
usually, go ahead.
Okay, I think just because of the lag between us, then yeah, when you start saying something, I'll say something, but then realize you're talking, so I'll stop. But then you'll see I'm saying something, so so that's probably my bad.
Um, yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, is there any, perhaps not maybe the biggest one, but is there any points you've ever come across that you thought, oh, you know, I'd like to have tweaked that better, or you know, in that regard, I'd like to have known a bit more in regards to how to fix that. Is there any thoughts you've got on any issues you have faced in the past, perhaps?
I mean, as far as pre-qualifying clients, for me, the challenge is knowing which questions to ask. Because like I've seen a lot of like templates for pre-qualifying questionnaires, and a lot of them are
Yep.
very long, and like there's a huge variety of questions. And if you keep asking the same types of questions in succession, some people get like really annoyed. It's like, why are you
Of
asking me
course.
that? Something similar like two
Yep.
questions ago. And so it's like
Yep.
it has to kind of translate into a sort of organic conversation, and
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
one of like clearly conversations are difficult for me.
Hey, I think we're going fine. I think you're doing very well, and you know I really appreciate you you know coming on, participating in this sales training. So yeah, I think you're doing fantastically, and I think everyone at home will agree. So yeah, I guess just having those questions there, just and then learning to organically bring them into a conversation. Sometimes it's a case of you may end up having it's although it's a seemingly organic conversation, it may in essence be a sales pitch that you now have honed into a 45-minute conversation that you know exactly what you're going to say because of, and coming from a sales background, that's what I would learn in essence, because in my last role when I started, they would say, hey, here you go, get started. I was like, cool, like, where's the sales script? No, there isn't one. Like, you got to figure that out. I'm like, well, shit. you know, and so from there, I then honed, in essence, it was almost a 45-minute monologue. And as much as that sounds like a significant amount of time, filling that in with the client's questions and answers, it really brought the amount of talking down, but it's still spaced out for about 45 minutes. And obviously, your time's very precious. So 45 minutes when you have no idea, these people haven't filled in any questionnaires or they haven't done any pre-qualifiers, then that's not worth your time. But even if you bring it down to say like a 20 to 25-minute conversation, that's still enough to learn where they're at. Because as an example, for a very, very short period, for only 3 months, I worked in one of Australia's largest telecommunications company. And basically the role was, it was basically the saves team as such. So if you're from Australia, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And basically what it was people would call up and say, I've got an issue with my service. I'm not happy with it. I want to cancel. So it was my job to not only preventing them from canceling, but I would then have to upsell them something on top of that as well. So as you can imagine, that was a lot of fun. And the reason I say I worked there for 3 months was because the first month was just training. So it was a full month of training. And then the second month was when we hit the floors. And then, well, really, I'd say 2.5 odd months, because I found that I was there and, just not only the people on my team, but people that had been there for many, many years, I was selling more than, I was doing like triple the sales than a lot of other people on the floor. And, some were getting a bit agitated. Some had been there for like 4 years and like, oh, well, how's this guy getting like triple our sales? He must be saying like dodgy stuff. Let's listen to him on the phones. And it wasn't that at all. It was just, I was good at sales. And I found that the reason I left, one of the main reasons, was that despite me tripling sales to others on the floor, I wasn't hitting all my KPIs. And so I wasn't getting any bonuses for the work I was doing. I was making them the most amount of money, but because I was taking longer per conversation, I wasn't ticking that have the call within a certain time frame tick. And because that tick wasn't there, I wasn't getting my targets. And so there was no reward for it. And I said to them, I said to management, well, look at the stats, like look at what's going on here. Look at mine and then look at, literally 90% of other people's. And they're like, yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but just from a higher management level, that's not what they want. I was like, well, they're obviously not in sales. That's sales. You have to put time in. So the amount of conversations I'll have cold with someone that goes for half an hour or 40 minutes, and then it turns out that they're not suitable. Well, then that's sure, it's a waste of my half an hour. But for those that are suitable, sometimes they do need the extra time to then get them across the line. So, it's about learning, having almost a sales script. And sure, in essence, Amanda, before you were saying, you've got these downloaded questions that are pre-qualifiers, but a lot of them sound very similar. And if you tweak those to basically put it into a conversation, then you can still manage your social energy, because in essence, you know what you're going to say. It's no longer exhausting to be like with myself, as you can imagine, I talk very quickly and, it's kind of in your face a bit, and I don't mean for that to happen. It's just kind of how I am. But in saying that, it's just, I'll do that. And it gets tiring at times. There's nights where I'll just be like, nah, like screw it. I'm going to just sit down and watch TV and I'm done for the day. But if you know exactly what you're going to say, it's nowhere near as emotionally and, physically draining to really get that same conversation across the line. So, some of the questions you've got will be absolutely fantastic in generating qualifications or, qualifying these people, but it's just needing to know which ones. Veronica's asked, how many interactions do you think on average before people want to buy? Veronica, it's a great question, and it really depends. So if I'm sitting down in front of someone, 7 out of 10 on average. I mean, it varies, some months it'll be like nothing and then it'll shoot up to like 9 out of 10, but on average it'll be 7 out of 10 people when I'm sitting in front of them will buy, providing they're qualified. If they're unemployed, then there's nothing we can do. But when you say are on the phones, then those stats significantly drop. And when you're cold calling, those stats significantly drop even further. You cold call, it's like 1%. It's nothing. So it's a fantastic question, but it really depends on your industry, how qualified the person is prior to being in front of them or interacting with them. Really it's just many different factors. So if it's like B2B door knocking, then it's still higher than cold calling, but it's a very low stat. Really, really depends on the industry and many different factors there, but fantastic question. So Amanda, do you have any thoughts, or do you remember perhaps even one of the qualifying questions that they had within that script that you downloaded? Maybe we can work on that together. Phone rang. I think cut out.
Like 40 something different questions on it. It was like,
yeah,
really long.
Is there any that you can think of, even like one of those? If you can't, that's okay. We can work through it, but I just thought if there was any questions on there that kind of came to mind, we could kind of tweak it to work best for you and, personality traits and that sort of thing. But if you can't think of any on there, no stress at all.
Yeah, I think one of them asked what their annual marketing budget is, or how much they usually spend on marketing in a year. And most people are like just not wanting to answer that question at all.
Okay. Yep. I can absolutely understand that for sure. Yep. Oh, no, well, that's a great question to bring up, definitely, because we can certainly work on that together while I've got you on the phone. So perhaps opposed to asking what's your marketing budget, perhaps after you've built up some of that rapport, you can start to ask, well, with this, with this website we're going to be building or whatever else, how long have you been marketing your service for? And that's a much more open-ended question that's a lot less vulnerable in regards to the response. They might say, oh, well, because I'm just getting a website built now, I actually haven't started with a marketing budget, or I've been, I want to update my website, and so I've been perhaps marketing my service for a year or 2 years or something like that. And that helps you to then gauge, in essence, where they're at in regards to their business. Because if they've only really just started marketing or they haven't marketed at all, well, then it's going to go one of two ways. It's either they've saved up heaps of cash and they're ready to move forward, or that they don't have a lot of cash because they've started their business but money isn't coming in. So, by perhaps asking how long have you been marketing your business for, then they're going to be much more open in regards to responding to that. And that's just, and what were your thoughts on that? Would you agree with me there, or you'd like us to kind of work on it a bit more so?
I agree.
Okay. Okay. So, once we've asked that in regards to, well, how often or how long have you been marketing your service for? And let's just say they said, oh, I haven't started marketing my service yet. You can say, okay, well, have you got a plan in place to market your service? And then that once again brings us even closer to knowing the end goal, because if they do have a plan in place, then they'd have to have a budget in place. Because if they do have a plan in place, but the plan doesn't involve having a budget, it's like, well, that's a really shitty plan. So then if they say, oh, well, I don't have a plan in place, then you can be like, and that's when it's starting to not necessarily ring alarm bells, but it's more so a case of, all right, well, in this case, then this person might not be ready for my service. So, all right, well, if you haven't got a plan in place for your marketing, have you set aside a budget for your marketing, or are you still in the stage of figuring out what direction you're going to be taking your business in? And that's, although it's not really an open-ended question, it's kind of two questions in one. So you're still going to get an answer that's not a yes or a no. Because with basic sales, open-ended questions are absolutely where you're at, unless it's a yes question. So if you're going to ask them something that ends in a yes, and 100% is going to end in a yes, ask it. Because the more times they say yes, the more likely subconsciously they're going to want to say, yes, I want this service. And it seems a bit strange, but yeah. Veronica, that question always feels to me like they are going to change their price based on my budget. Well, Veronica, sometimes that is the case, like absolutely, but at the same time, if someone is talking to you or talking to, a potential client, and they have now gauged their budget and they can't afford a top end service, but you still know that they can offer you something within their service range, then would you not prefer to at least have one of their lower services within your budget than not have their service at all? And so that's why sometimes it is good to ask questions like that, because it's not always a case of just like like a snake oil salesman just saying, oh, I'm going to offer 10 grand, but if they can't afford it, I'll offer 2 grand. It's not like that. It's more a case of gauging where the audience is at, so then they can actually offer them the best service for their budget. Because if someone's spent the time talking to me, then they're somewhat interested in what I have to say and somewhat interested in the service I have to offer. So I want to try and help to get them across the line as much as possible, so then I can help them achieve their goals. Whereas, if someone's on the phone for you for half an hour and they have literally no point, they just don't feel like they want to buy, then really they're wasting your time, but they don't respect their time either. So then offering them a price makes no difference. So, that a question like that, sometimes it really is for the best customer's interest at heart, opposed to just picking a price. And certainly there are cases where people will just pick a random price, higher or lower, which I don't agree with. But in saying that, sometimes if we can fluctuate it a little bit, then absolutely, because if the person is charging you more, they're then going to spend less time having to look for other clients or sales, and they can focus on your service better. So it's really a two-sided coin for that one. Yeah. So, really just asking them questions like that to figure out where they are in regards to their marketing, and if they've got a plan in place. From the plan, we can then figure out, okay, well, do you have a budget for your marketing plan? And if it's a no, so, okay, that's when it's really time to start bringing out the questions like, all right, well, for something like this, then, because you don't have a plan or a budget for your marketing, have you put aside a budget for a website or for, X service? And then it's a yes or a no. And it's like, okay, well, if it's a no, then, these are my services, but, what were your thoughts in regards to what you were wanting to pay for the service? Because now it seems as if there's all these alarm bells that they have no idea what they're doing. They've kind of just jumped in the deep end. They're not ready to move forward. So now it's as if, well, is this person unintentionally wasting my time? So that's when it's okay to start then being like, all right, well, this is in essence, what I'm offering. what can you afford? And obviously it's not blatantly what can you afford, but you know, it's you really want to be able to, throughout the conversation, qualify them as much as possible. So then when it does come down to crunch time of asking for price, if they have no budget at all, or they haven't saved up anything, or because I had a phone call with someone recently, and you know, I didn't pre-qualify them. It was a referral, and you know, the guy was like, "Oh, I'm keen to do this, this, and this," and he's listing all these like lots of add-ons and all this, and I thought, great, like cool. So we're having a chat, but then he goes, "Oh, but with my budget, I'm not really sure what I can afford." And I thought, "Oh, all right, well, shit. All right, well, in that regard, then, why don't you tell me what your budget is, and we can work backwards from that?" Because at this point, we'd already built up that rapport and trust that he knew I wasn't going to just pick a random price and, you know, try and rip him off or anything like that. So, you know, I said to him, you know, being honest with you, why don't we then, pick your budget? And then it ended up being, it was nothing. it was very little in price. So I thought, yeah, look, I was like, look, I can be honest with you, I really can't. There's not a lot I can do for you in that regard then. You know, so Veronica said, true, never looked like that. Paying high rates may mean that they don't have to spend time searching for more of their own clients, so they can focus more on you. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the benefits of working with someone at a higher price point, because in that regard, it's that, you know, you're either working more for less money and you're spreading yourself thin, or you're picking basically less clients, but you know, putting more effort in. So it's not necessarily picking less clients and working less, still working the same. It's just you're putting that effort and energy into less people, so then you can offer them a greater service. And that's really one reason to charge that higher price point. But at the same time, if it's something that you really just need to get someone across the line, sometimes doing them at a lower price point means the difference between, say, you know, paying rent that week or not. Then it's just a case of, well, you know, get it done. But yeah, so I mean, with like Amanda, does that, at least now we've started to go through those questions, has that helped give you some direction in regards to qualifying people if you've got them, say, is it on the phone or via email? Like more so, I assume, on the phone?
I mostly, I'm more of a text-based communication person.
Okay. Yep.
I've had a couple recently that are similar to the example that you gave, where they wanted like a lot of stuff, and I priced it all out. I even shaved a couple grand off of it because it was quite massive. I'm just like,
Yep.
you know, allowance there, because yeah, it was massive. And then they come back and they're like, oh, that's a lot more expensive. I'm like, okay, well, you know, tell me which things in this list are vital to you and which ones to get rid of. Because in their case, it was like the website, and then like consulting to help them with their business, building out
Yep.
And building webinar slides, like writing the webinar, building webinar slides, basically all of the marketing for their whole entire thing. And I'm like, this is not like a, you know, quick weekend type job. This is like stuff. So I priced out, like, here's what it is. I itemized the sections so that, like, okay, this thing costs this much, this thing costs this much, like, this is what you're looking at. So I'm like, you know, looking at this, like, what are the things on this list that you absolutely must have now, and which things can we add later? And I was
Yep.
like, you know, if it's like within a couple grand of your budget, we could, you know, nudge that a little to try to make it work. Because, like,
Cool.
I want to help people, you know what I mean? But then,
Exactly. Yeah.
And then at that point, people usually just like start ignoring me and not messaging me back, because it's like it hurts their pride to have to pick and choose. It's like when you're in the line and like, oh no, my budget, you know, I can't afford all of these things, I have to put something back. That's like, you know, a fairly embarrassing situation to be stuck in. But it's like, it's just literally just me and them in a conversation. So like, I feel like by that point, I should have at least built up enough rapport that they're okay talking to me about that kind of stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and it's difficult though. Like, I mean, you know, certainly if you're most comfortable through a text scenario, then, you know, work on your strengths there. But sometimes the quickest way to build rapport is, say, a point of contact in person, whether it's, you know, verbally on the phone or, you know, a quick video call and things like that. And, you know, I absolutely agree with you that if people are given the option and then they can't afford it, it does, it hurts the pride a little bit, and then they're almost reluctant to move forward. But one thing that you could really leverage is, opposed to offering them everything, is offering 2 options. And then that way you can really say, all right, well, this is a base level option, and then this is all the bells and whistles. And if you're given an option of 2, you're much more likely to pick one or the other. Whereas if you are just given an option, it's a yes or a no. So, using that as an example for, constructive criticism for next time, because that's fantastic that we're going through this, and that's what I'm here for, to help. So you're doing fantastically, and I appreciate you coming on to do this, because I guess being in a sales training environment in a live setting, it's a little daunting in essence. So I really appreciate you coming on, but I hope that it does offer some value to you and everyone else listening at home as well. So by offering
that, for any introverts watching, the key to actually, oh no, I'm too scared to do a live call, whatever, it's accountability. I've been saying for like weeks, I'm like, oh, I'm going to start doing live video. I'm going to start doing live video. I'm going to start doing live video. And then it just like never happened. And then you were talking to me yesterday about it. I'm like, oh, I can't right now, and you're like, tomorrow, we're doing this tomorrow. And I'm like, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So thank you for being flexible in that.
I'm letting Ross down.
No, but I really do appreciate you coming on and being flexible with that, because it is I'm big on an accountability buddy. And Barbara, Franz, thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm really big on having an accountability buddy, and I think that it's so important to have, because then it helps people track your goals and vice versa. So then that way you can really help one another in moving forward. So coming back to the whole text-based predominantly, and then getting to the point of talking about the services, and then if they can't afford it, they don't want to move forward, so they start ignoring emails and things like that. Offering someone 2 points or 2 options is going to be much better in regards to having them make a decision. But if it's difficult, because with the introverts, obviously, it's much more comfortable to do it via email, but over time, if you're able to practice on the phone, it is gonna help benefit your business. Like, just as much as I'm big on, if you don't feel comfortable doing video, don't do it, and so forth. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that over time, if you can, certainly try and get on a call here and there. And it's something that maybe it's like today I'm doing virtual coffees, and it was a case of, basically, it is just a pitch-free chat that, we can chat and see what's going on. So, for you to say, offer a virtual coffee in your group, sure, you're getting to know everyone in your group, but also you're building your communication skills. You're just having a pitch-free chat with someone. And as much as you set the limits, because today's coffees are only 15 minutes, 20 at most, but just because I've got so many booked in, that's really, I've set the tone and said, well, look, if you want to pick my brain with anything, you're more than welcome to. But it does help with the conversational skills, because I don't know who the other person is on the end of the phone, and they might want to just practice talking to someone new. And so that in itself is going to be really beneficial in your business, because when you pitch something, whether it's a price or a service or whatever else, if it's pitched and they're almost on the spot, via a phone call or face-to-face, then they have to make a decision. And sometimes, they will say, oh, no, let me think about it. And in that regard, then we obviously haven't built up enough rapport, or we haven't qualified them enough to, know that they're ready for the service. But via email, if you say this is the pricing, there's no accountability there, because all they have to do is just not reply anymore, and then that's the end of it, and you don't hear from them again. So if over time you were able to just practice just the odd call here and there, it's going to be fantastic for your business. But it really, you have to feel comfortable doing that as well. So I certainly don't want to say, absolutely every phone call or every time you talk to a client, getting a call. It's just a case of practicing over time, just to see if you can. If Amanda, if it's something you absolutely don't feel comfortable in, then, stick with the text. But it's more just a case of, if you can, almost, I don't want to frame it as putting them on the spot, but if they're there, there's accountability. Barbara says, yes, offer the services and packages. It may help you find someone to role play with a few times until you feel more confident. Yeah, so basically just practice your sales script. Like, that's great. And if you need to, like, if you don't have anyone to do that with, like, hook me up later and we can, you can jump on a call and you can sell me your service. Like, not today, but, we can certainly do that. I'm happy to do that for you. Because it is like, with the role I was talking about before, I basically had a 45-minute monologue, and it was just because I'd done it so many times that I, in essence, just learned what I was going to say. And I remember once a guy rang up and he's like, "Oh, you said I could get this, this, and this. I want a refund." And it was purely that his bank balance bounced. So he's trying to get refund. And I was like, "I absolutely didn't say those things." He's like, "Yeah, you did." I was like, "Nah, dude. It was essentially a 45-minute monologue. Would you like me to recite to you right now exactly what I said for 45 minutes? And he goes, oh, nah, it's okay." And that was the end of it. Refund disappeared. So, it's one of those things that, once you've practiced enough, then you're going to feel much more comfortable doing it. And then once you've practiced enough, then you can start practicing doing that, say, on the phone. And then you can step it up that way. Because certainly, as I was saying before, in comparison from introverts to extroverts, on a sales call, there is less emotional momentum on the call because it's more of a slow tonality, and sometimes there might be a little bit of a stuttering conversation, but that's okay. You work on your strengths. Like we were talking about yesterday with the whole, I framed it as the awkward influencer, just joking around because you're saying you love to get in that influencer space, and I think there's a massive market for the need for an awkward influencer or an introvert influencer. Like there's so many out there that with working digitally, there's that barrier, here there's a screen between us. And so for many, it's such a positive reason to work in the digital space because there is that screen behind. So it's very different than working, say, in a retail environment or something like that, where you're conversing with people face to face. Now, for myself, the reason, because obviously you can probably guess I'm a bit of an extrovert. The reason I've chosen the digital space is because I've got the autonomy that I can basically start a business and day one be international. Like, most of you guys, listening are from the States. I'm in Australia. So from day one, I've already started a, international business that's scalable and all that. And that's what really appealed to me in the online space. Whereas for, say, some introverts, working behind a screen is going to be much more comfortable. And that's great. You're playing to your strengths. And that's what it comes down to. It really comes down to just figuring out your strengths and how you can work on them. So, I mean, with an introvert, just, more so, I guess we can frame it as being quiet and professional. I think that's and that's something that, those strengths there, like, no doubt that, your follow-up calls, your follow-up emails are going to be a lot higher than those that are just go all the time. And then sometimes they forget to do follow-up emails and things like that. So there's another strength. And, when it comes to the pitch as such, once you feel comfortable in pitching, then you're going to be much better off in then moving forward with your service. And coming back to the whole, just to frame up from earlier, if you're going to ask questions, ask open-ended questions that are going to get an open-ended response, unless it's a yes question. If you can say something, and what I mean by that is, just say we're having a chat about a website, and so you're looking for a website. Now, that's to promote your business, yeah? Okay, yes. Well, that right there, I've just almost coaxed you into saying yes. Smooth.
That's called
and
because it's not the sale, but it's a trial close to get them to say yes before the actual yes.
Absolutely. And if you can do that throughout the entire conversation, then by the time you get to the point of crunch time and you've now given them two options, say, which option do you want? They're going to pick one and say, yes, I want that one. And that's, that's
times.
So was that a meta?
Said yes a bazillion times.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, the audio cut out.
Not going to change and say no now. I have to keep saying yes.
Exactly. Absolutely. So, it's a great frame to have because and I mean, yes, it's very salesy as such, but this is a sales call. So, it's a case of, well, they're inquiring about a service and you can help them. You genuinely know you can help them with that service. So it doesn't matter what you're doing to get them across the line because it's going to be a benefit to them. So, Barbara's asked, what kind of initial consultation do you offer? So, Barbara, Amanda is in web design. Is that what you're talking about with Amanda's service? Because, yeah, we're discussing web design at the moment. But, Amanda, you've got a few other services as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Web development is one of my main ones because I've been doing it for so long, but I also offer business consulting. I have my MBA, project management, and all of the tons of self-study of figuring stuff out. So I end up giving advice to people a lot. And like the fact that it's like I mentioned, Alicia did a live earlier, and I say it all the time, but I said on there, people who invest get invested. So if like basically, if you give free advice, people are less likely to take it seriously or take action. So, I mean, like obviously, there's some level of like free advice is good, but like if you're giving them like hard hitting advice that's like big time crazy stuff that could totally make a huge impact on their business, if they have to pay you to get that information, they're going to take it more seriously. Because like if they invest a couple grand in a bunch of help, they're going to be like, I have to make this work. Whereas if it's free, they're like, well, I mean, that might work, but and then they just like don't do anything.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Someone asked me the other day, they're like, "Oh, I've been I've been offering a lot of free business consulting, but I really want to now offer, paid. What do you recommend?" And I said, well, if you're going to do say like a seminar for people to come to, it's at least charge them something, $20, $50 to get them through the door. Because if they're paying for information, they're going to take it a lot more seriously. And so, I completely agree with you in that respect. So, it's as I was saying before, like to come to Barbara's questions just now as well, if do you offer a 30-minute phone consult to learn about the prospect? If you feel comfortable in text, that's great, like emails and things like that. But if you can start to get on the phones at some point just to even practice, that would be fantastic, because that's going to help you so much in regards to not only building rapport with your potential clients, but it's going to help you gauge them a lot more, because they're only willing to write so much in an email. Whereas say if you type for a minute and you speak for a minute, the differences are massive in the amount of context you're going to get and the amount of information you're going to receive. So, if at some point you can, fantastic, but build up to it, feel comfortable in doing it. Don't feel stressed out that you have to do a phone call.
Something that's interesting, for me, phone calls are actually harder than video chat.
Okay.
I can see you, so there are like little nonverbal cues, right? Like if you, oh
Yep.
yeah, okay, then I can continue. Whereas if you're like, wait, what? Like I can see in your face that you're like confused about something, that I can like backtrack and explain it more or whatever. Like it's a lot easier than being on the phone and like staring at my wall and like I don't know how this is coming across. There's just silence on the other end right now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Great. If you feel video call is the way to go, then if a client wants to do if you want to do a discovery call with a client, absolutely insist it's a video call. And that way you're playing to your strengths. Let them know it's a video call, just so that way they don't answer the phone and they're not in pants. But but yeah, it's great. So, if you feel comfortable or more comfortable on a call, a video call, rather than just a phone call, then absolutely, focus on that. Because, non-verbal cues are fantastic to work with. And that's why with face-to-face sales, it is so much easier to get them across the line, because I can sense, when something's going on. If someone's just leant back in their chair, like they've just done this, then I know something's just going to miss. And I'm going to figure out, all right, well, hang on a minute, what were we just talking about? Why did that happen? Why have they now sat back? And what can I do to reel them back in? So it's really a case of those non-verbal cues are just as important. So if you can do it on a video call, then 100% do that. And the only reason I didn't mention the video call earlier was just because, I just kind of thought that you might have found the phone call less confronting than video call, but it's fantastic that you would prefer the video call. So absolutely, hone your craft, learn the sales pitch, and then, jump on those calls. I have lost Amanda for a moment, just with the internet there, but she will jump back on any moment. So yeah, for everyone tuning in at home, so this is a sales training for the introvert. So I think it has frozen, but Amanda will jump on back in a second. So really it was just today that the other day in the Niche Entrepreneur Community Facebook group, I asked if anyone wanted to jump on a sales training with me. And so I picked Amanda just to try and help. And she's basically come on today. So she's done fantastically in that regard, because it can be a bit daunting, getting sales training in a live setting. So I really appreciate her coming on, and I appreciate everyone jumping on as well. So once Amanda, there we go. So we'll go approve, and Amanda will jump back in. And that way we can get back to where we started, or pick up where we left off, I should say. So we're just waiting for Amanda to come back in. But yeah, we've come on some really good points. So for everyone that's just tuned in, so if you're on a sales call at the very end, in regards to qualifying if they can afford your service or not, throughout the entire conversation, just try and hit key questions. Hey, Amanda.
My phone rang and then it froze. I don't.
No, that's cool. So I was just kind of summing up everything for everyone so far. So if you're on a sales call, throughout the entire call, try and gauge as to if they can afford your service or not, but not blatantly ask them, can you afford it? It's more, where you are in your business. Okay, are there any stresses within your business? And they might be like, oh yeah, I do have some stress. I'm like, cool. Is it financial based, or is it that you've got too much going on in your business, or you don't have direction? And then that can really help to gauge where you're at or where they're at in regards to their business and their affordability. And then throughout the conversation, if you can lead into, soft closes, getting them to say yes throughout the conversation. When you do hit that point at the end, then when you say, do you want the service? It's now a yes. And then offering two options is going to be much better than offering one, because one is a yes or no. Whereas if you've built up that rapport over time and you're not sure if they can afford the service or, whatever else, if you're offering them, say, one with all the bells and whistles and then a much lower price point service, but it's still offering them value, then, saying, well, which one do you want, one or the other? And that someone is much more likely to say, all right, I want this one or that one, opposed to, once again, just saying, oh, no, I don't want it. Because if they say I don't want it, then you haven't done something right throughout the conversation, where you either haven't qualified them enough to know that they can afford it, or you haven't built up enough rapport. Because remember, they've come to you for the service. So, yes, you can't sell to everyone, but they've made the inquiry to you for your service. They've said, I potentially want this service. I want a service in this field. I'd like to hear what you have to say to see if you can sell me that service. And that's what every single discovery call is about. Because if someone didn't want your service, then why would they jump on a call? Like, that doesn't make sense. And sure, someone might be in, say, like a competitor analysis mindset where they just want to learn what competitors are doing, but that's like one in like 100 phone calls. Like, so don't even worry about that. Like, and if you don't sell to someone, it's not the end of the day. It's just you move on. So, really trying to figure out how you can get them across the line is fantastic. So, Amanda, I figured just one thing we can go through as well is, do you know much about with features and benefits and selling the two?
Yes.
All right. So I figured as well, we'll just for something else as well, just to help with the conversation throughout, just to help with your sales script as such. There's features and there's benefits. So like a feature would be, for instance, the website is going to help feature business information, and that way it will portray your business. So that is a feature, but benefits sell. Features don't sell, benefits sell. So for instance, we said, well, if you have a website, it's going to create an online presence for you. So by having an online presence, it's going to just basically increase your credibility, because then customers are going to be able to see that you're online, see that you're a real business. And then that way it builds trust, and that's one benefit of having a website. What else? Consumer insights, for instance, that'd be another one. So by having a website and by customers going to your website, using tools like Google Analytics, you can see what your customers are doing or your potential customers are doing on your website. And by that, you then get better insight in regards to, well, what do you need to focus on more? So that's another benefit as such. Something else, for instance, if you want to run, say, Google ads or SEO, things like that, you're going to need some sort of online presence. You're going to need a website to be able to do that. Because if you're running Google ads, but you have nowhere to lead these people, what's the point? So exactly. So try and mention as many benefits within the conversation as you can, but try and do it organically. Like if they're chatting, and this is purely off the cuff. Let's have a look. Let's say you're chatting to them about web design, and you're having a chat and you're saying, okay, well, you mentioned that in your business, you really wanted to be known in, say, the space of volunteer. You really want to have your own business that, it's a non-for-profit space. And one benefit of having a website is that if you have that website, you've now got that credibility where others can see that you've got an established business. Because if you've got a website, then it's much more likely people are going to be like, oh, cool. So one benefit is that you can take payments through the website as a and not in regards to a feature of taking payments, but in regards to a benefit that you're able to actually take people's donations, which you couldn't do if you didn't have a website. So that's kind of one thing, or one frame of mind you put it as. So really it's just trying to figure out exactly what their industry is, and then just spitting out as many benefits as you can throughout the conversation organically, without it seeming like you're just reading off a list.
Yeah.
So Amanda has,
There's
absolutely,
There's an interesting way to get to what the benefits are. If you look at a feature and then you ask yourself, okay, why would they give a shit? And then find the answer to that. And then for that answer, ask again, why would they care? And then ask again, and keep asking until there's literally nothing left. Like, okay, they want a website because it's traffic they can control. Why do they care about that? Because, if Facebook could shut down their page, so it's better to have something they can control. Okay, why do they care about that? Well, because they want people to be able to find them. Why do they care about that? Because people that find them can give them money. And then so on and so on down the line, until there's you get to the root of exactly why it matters. And then you're like, okay, here's the feature and here's what it'll do for you. And you have all of that information because you've done, okay, why should they care? Why should they care? Why should they care?
Yeah, great point. Amanda, you're an absolute pro. You should be running the sales training.
I know how to do it. I'm just really bad at it.
Okay. Well, it's just practice. That's all it is. As much as I'm trying to give information on this, I've got almost 14 years of sales experience. Like my first, I guess, sales was even just going to markets with my dad at 13 or 14 or however old I was. And then people would walk by and I'd try to bring them to my table, and I'm pretty sure once I heard Gary Vee say that as well. I was like, yes.
I was doing that at age 6. My dad, the swap meet was our thing all summer long, every single weekend.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So you've got that ingrained sales in you. It's just getting it out and, really getting it flourishing. So it's really just a case of practice makes perfect. And because my entire career has been sales based in one way or another, then I've just managed to hone that craft more. And that's why I'm really enjoying the digital space, because now it's a different type of sales once again. So I'm now learning a new skill. And that's why with this training, I really wanted to make it about sales in the true sense of the word. Because we had some fantastic questions prior to this when I was trying to get people to put their hand up to come on, and someone was saying, "Oh, I'd love to know how to build this, or sell that through ads or whatever." And that's marketing is sales, but to me, it's not sales in the true sense of the word. So that's why I wanted to really offer value in a environment that I felt comfortable in sharing information. Because if I don't know something, I don't want to say it, or if I know something, but only a little bit, I'm the first person to put my hand up saying I'm no expert, but personally, my personal experience, I found this has worked for me. It's really just a case of, figuring out what works best for you. And if the video calls are going to help, then by all means, if you can, once you've honed your sales script, and just because you've got a customer on the phone, it doesn't mean if they don't buy from you, it doesn't mean the end of the world. There's always going to be another customer. People always need websites. People always need whatever you're selling. They always need that. So it's not the end of the world if the customer you've got on the phone then and there doesn't buy.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I think Landon Porter calls it positive indifference. You need to approach every sales call situation with the mind of it's totally fine if they don't buy this. I'm entirely okay walking away if it isn't a match. And that helps so much just in mindset of being able to get it done. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Landon's actually coming on the podcast soon as well. I have to.
That'll be a fun one.
Yeah, there'll be so much swearing. But it would be great. Well, Amanda, today, has that helped to give you some more direction like that? Has that helped to, I guess, hone the craft a bit better?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Is there anything else while I've got you on the phone here? Is there anything else that you'd like to touch base on, or anything else that I can help focus on with you today?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment, so.
Cool. All right, well, if you do think of anything later, just send me a message and we can always just jump on a call at a later date. But, I hope that does help. So, thank you for coming on. And as I said before, I know, especially, being an introvert sales training, It can be a bit daunting coming on in a live setting, but I'm so glad you've done it, and I really hope that gave you some value. And everyone listening in at home, thank you so much for investing your time with us here today, and I hope that has helped at least 1 or 2 points. If you get at least one takeaway point from today, I'll call that a win. So, thank you for tuning in, and Amanda, yeah, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, we'll chat soon.